Whilst Dragon's Rising has introduced us to a multitude of new fantastic characters, we have also seen the return of a handful of older characters throughout these new seasons. And honestly, some of these returns have been fairly major, some have been maybe just cameos, but they have been interesting to see. But of course, there is still an extensive catalogue of Ninjago characters we have not seen since the original show ended, and a lot of people are really hoping we do get to see them in the future. But I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I think some of these characters are not going to return in Dragon's Rising, or maybe not even at all. So today I'm going to give my prediction for 5 characters that I don't think we are going to see throughout the course of Dragon's Rising, and some of these I'm questioning if we will see full stop as well, and I would like to know if you do agree with my prediction, and I would also like to know if you have any different opinions as well. But let me actually get into the 5 characters and not waste any more of your time. Now I will be going in order from number 5 to number 1. Number 5 is a character that I don't think will return but has the most likely of this bunch, and number 1 is of course the one that I just don't think will return at all. And number 5 for me is going to actually be Skylar. The thing about Skylar is the fact that she had very much an opportunity to return within Dragon's Rising already, and that was Season 2 Part 2. To be perfectly honest, this honestly extends out to multiple of the Elemental Masters, such as Karloff, Griffin Turner. A lot of those Elemental Masters that we never actually saw within the Tournament of Sources, I don't think stand any chance of coming back because they simply missed their opportunity. And in the case of Skylar specifically, of course, a lot of what she is tied to is the case of Kai. And the thing is that there's another missed opportunity in that regard. Kai very much had Season 2. Kai had a lot of attention given to him during that time. And unless we get another Kai-centric Dragon's Rising season, which I honestly don't think we will get, I really don't think there's going to be much of an opportunity for her return. Honestly, if she ends up with some sort of cameo, I would very much like to see that. But the thing is that apart from that, I really don't think it's actually going to happen. Another thing that honestly is kind of a defining factor for me is the case of the magazine that released that stated that she was actually the ex-partner of Kai. Off screen, if this magazine is to be believed, they have actually ended their actual relationship. So again, it feeds into this idea that there's probably just not going to be any space for a character like Skylar. If her and Kai's relationship is officially done, there is no reason to bring her back, maybe outside of a few second cameo. But even then, I truly do not think that will actually happen. But honestly, if she did return, I would be more than happy for that to be the case, and again, it very much could happen because she had returns within the 11-minute era that I wasn't expecting, but I do think on an overall, she just probably won't ever come back. Unfortunately, that is going to be the case in my opinion, but I hope LEGO do prove me wrong. But that does lead me into the number 4 spot, and you'll be surprised to hear that this technically isn't just down to one specific character, it's actually down to a group. Now I initially did consider say the Upley for this spot, but I do think number 4 has to go to the new ninja that we saw in Crystallized. What's interesting to me is that it seems to be that there's a lot of people that actually do want to see the new ninja return, and also there is a story explanation for them to actually return in that way. The thing is that when the ninja were missing for a few years, there was no confirmed protector or savior of say Ninjago City, and it does leave this idea that there could theoretically be a new hero out there that took the ninja's place, and a lot of people do want that to be the new ninja, and they want that confirmed within the story itself. But the thing is that it just simply doesn't really hold a place in the story of Dragon's Rising. Of course, you could have a headcanon that that was the case, and that is completely fine, and honestly I do kind of agree with that. But in context of what the story of Dragon's Rising is, and especially at the point we're currently at, I just don't think they would slow down to re-explain things from when the ninja were missing. We are far past that point. The only time you could have necessarily have done that is within Season 1, and of course we're nowhere near that season anymore. So I do think it's a case of they're just going to kind of forget about that whole question of who was protecting the city, and because of it, also forget about the new ninja. Because the thing is, how else could you really bring them back? The whole thing of the new ninja in Crystallized was the fact that they wanted someone new because the ninja stopped being the ninja for a year, and the ninja are back and stronger than ever and with a bigger team than ever. So there is, in my opinion, just quite literally no reason to actually have them back within the show. Again, a cameo would be interesting, or just some passive mention maybe, but I really don't think they would give that kind of attention to characters that are just kind of gone now. But I do understand why a lot of people do want to see them back. I just don't think it's gonna happen. But like I said, it's still a really fun headcanon, and it is one that I personally have to this very day. And I'm gonna be honest, I think that's just kind of going to be where it lies. I just think the new ninja are an example of the characters that we will just simply never see ever again. And a lot of people may be upset about that, but unfortunately that's the case, and that's kind of Ninjago for you. But they're the number 4 pick. Coming in at the number 3 spot for me is actually going to be Lloyd's mother, Masako. I think a lot of people are going to be very happy about this pick because, for one, I don't think she's going to return anytime soon, and 2, I don't think people want her to return anytime soon. The thing about Masako is the fact that she's not really had a purpose within the plot of any of the seasons for a very long time. Of course, she was a very pivotal aspect of the very early seasons of Ninjago, but especially in the 11-minute era, she just hasn't really had anything to do. If you think about when she's been around during those seasons, you just kind of think of her just being almost there. She's never actually had a necessary purpose within any plot of the show. And especially when you look at Dragon's Rising, which is very plot heavy, very story focused, I don't think they would waste the time to bring back a character like Masako if she's simply just not going to serve any purpose within the show. Of course, you could have a purpose in the show if you wanted to, and I do think season 4 there is an opportunity for it to be the case, but I also think they still wouldn't go ahead with it. Remember, the thing about Season 4 is the fact that it's going to be exploring Lloyd's elemental power. It's going to go more into depth about the character of Lloyd, and for that reason, you could interconnect it back with Masako. You could have her have some sort of role within the season to help Lloyd in that regard. But the thing is that I just don't think they would give that role to Masako. I think if they were to give it to anyone, they would of course give it to Garmadon, and of course Garmadon is still not in Dragon's Rising. So I do think it would be a case of, if they were going to bring back anyone for that kind of role for Lloyd, it would just not be Masako. But like I said, I do think the other fairly major aspect that has influenced my pick here is the fact that the community just simply don't like Masako. She is one of the least popular characters, if not the most unpopular character within the entirety of the show. And fun fact, I do have a video coming up about that. But the thing is that the community just simply does not like the character. And I do think it goes out saying that the LEGO writers simply have also acknowledged that. So I don't think they would waste their time bringing back a character like her when they could bring back more of a beloved character instead. And that is why, ultimately speaking, she is at the number 3 spot. I just don't think the community wants her back, so I don't think the writers will bring her back accordingly. Although, speaking of bringing back characters, that does bring us into number 2. And I think it's ultimately going to have to go to the character of Harumi. I don't think she's going to be coming back anytime soon, if at all. The thing about Harumi is the fact that her return in Crystallize was so unbelievably controversial, and her ending in Crystallize was also very controversial, and I simply think it's a character that they no longer want to touch under fear of having the fans upset once more. The thing is that Crystallize really did sour a lot of people's opinions on a lot of different characters, and Harumi was definitely one of the main ones in that regard. So I think when it does come down to it, I just don't think they want to touch a character like her anymore because of the fear of bringing her back once more. The thing is that I actually would want to see Harumi come back. I don't think I'd want her back in a main character kind of sense, but it would be cool to actually have her share some scenes with Lloyd, actually bring some more of a finale between her and Lloyd in the actual plot itself. I think that would be a really interesting thing to actually see. But the thing is that, again, I really don't think they would waste time in Dragon's Rising actually doing this. I think there's just so much opportunity for so many other characters, and I just don't think they would go back to someone like her. Which is a shame, because it also unintentionally means that bringing her back in Crystallize would also mean that she's now just out in the world and there will never be anything done with her again in this situation. Which is kind of worse, because at least when Harumi met her fate, you could at least say she was a fantastic character and she was officially done. The thing is that by technicality, the Book of Harumi will continue to remain open, whereas before, it was completely closed. And just like that, I'm really understanding more and more why people viscerally hate this character, because the idea that she may just never be touched again and she'll just remain in the world of Ninjago is actually kind of sad to hear. So for that reason, I really hope I'm wrong about this one, because then we can at least close the book on Harumi. But as of now, I really do think she's a character they just simply won't touch. But she is the number 2 spot for that exact reason. But before I do the number 1 pick, because he is in that spot for a very different reason, I do want to give an honorable mention to some characters that I just simply wanted to bring up, and that was the case of the villains that a lot of people want to return, and also the villains that people don't want to return, and the main three for that is of course Narcon, the Time Twins, and the Overlord. All of these characters have reasons for how they could return, but all of them have reasons for why they wouldn't return. Narcon, he is way too controversial of a character. The thing is that his behavior has been analyzed very heavily and very heavily scrutinized as well by the Ninjago community. So I don't think Narcon would ultimately return out of safety. The Time Twins, I think it's just simply been too long. I don't think the writers want to touch those characters, just simply down to the fact of it's going to be very difficult to handle them, especially given how complicated that they could be considering how they've been left off. And the Overlord, again in similar vein to Harumi, crystallized. The reception was way too negative. If they touched the Overlord, I think they know that they would get a lot of hate. So I think all three of those could have been on these lists, but I did want to stick to characters that were at least had some more of a reason to come back. But ultimately speaking, I wanted to mention them anyways. But let's actually get into number one. And that number one pick is Ronan. I do think a lot of people weren't expecting him to be at the number one spot, but he does have, in my opinion, a very unique reason to not actually return. And that is because every single aspect of Ronan is done by another character, and to an extent better. Ronan has had a very weird up and down cycle within the course of Ninjago. He very much cycles between being an ally to the ninja and being an enemy of the ninja, and I think ultimately speaking the writers just didn't really know what to do with him, and both of those aspects of Ronan have officially now been done with a different character. Ronan's more villainous side has been taken up by a handful of different characters. You know, a non-power wielding villain that the ninjas still have to deal with on some sort of villainous basis. I mean, the main character I will think of is the Mechanic. They're very much favoring the Mechanic over Ronan, and I do think he kind of fills the slot for that side of Ronan ultimately. And the other side of Ronan is obviously the more anti-hero, you know, the more jaded bounty hunter aesthetic, and is still kind of on good terms with the ninja. And I feel like it goes without saying that that has definitely become Jay now. Jay has very much taken up that spot, especially when you do compare it to how Ronan was, especially during the likes of season 5 and 6. Of course, if Jay gets his memories back, it will leave that hole open for a new character to fill it in, but I still do think in that scenario they just simply wouldn't bring Ronan back. It feels like they just didn't really know what to do with Ronan, because every single time we see him, he does behave differently to how we see him beforehand. It does just feel like they just don't know how to navigate the character, and again that pushes forth the reason as to why he wouldn't return, because not only is every single personality aspect being used by someone else, they just clearly didn't know what they wanted with him. He just goes from good to evil very frequently, and I just think it's just not necessary anymore for a character like that to exist. I think they have very much got their characters where they want them to be, and I think introducing Ronan would just be a complete counter to that whole system. So ultimately speaking, he has to be in the number one spot. He is just a character that I'd be very surprised if we saw ever again, because I'm not even mentioning the fact that again, he has got some controversy surrounding him, especially considering how he acted towards Nia in season 5. But those are the characters, in my opinion, that I don't think we will see in Dragon's Rising or just in the show in general. I would love to know what you think of this list, because I really do think I've got a decent argument for all of these, but I would love to know if you do disagree. And if you have a completely different list, I would love to see it in the comments down below. There are a lot of characters that you could consider, a lot of characters that I considered, that I just think we may never see again, but I do think these are the ones that are most likely not going to come back. But again, I would love to know your thoughts. But thank you very much for watching this video, and I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider subscribing. I love discussing Ninjago with more people. It is extremely fun, and if you do want to support the channel further, which you don't have to, you could always consider becoming a member and joining the legends. On screen are some of the legends now, and I want to give a particular shout out to the eternal legend Grandmaster Sensei 28208. Thank you very much, my friend. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay, bye!